My name is Lacter, and I'm a psychologist in San Diego, California. And I contributed a chapter to this book on ritual abuse in the 21st century. My chapter is called Guidelines to Differential Diagnosis Between Schizophrenia and Ritual Abuse, Mind Control, Traumatic Stress. I've been working with ritual abuse and mind control survivors since the mid-1990s. And through this book, I met Trish. I'm going to get your chapter ready, and you can show your chapter. And it's right over here.
It's called Patterns in Mind Control, a first-person account.
Fantastic. Thank you. Okay. So when I was preparing a presentation for a conference on the psychological mechanisms that allow mind control to be installed and to exert continued control on people, I called you.
Yes.
Because your chapter was so wonderful, and I wanted to be able to talk to you more about how that mind control was installed and to use portions of your chapter, and we delved deeper into some stuff that wasn't in the chapter, and you were very, very helpful to me. So anyway, so based on that, we decided that we wanted to make a DVD to help other survivors, because you've done so well in your recovery, and I wanted other survivors to benefit from what you've learned. And also just to say this stuff out loud on video, to have a survivor sit in front of a defy the programming, and they might have told me not to talk, but I'm talking anyway, and also there were some other qualities about you that I just really wanted to capture for other survivors to be inspired by, so that's why we're here. Okay, fantastic. So anyway, can you just say a little bit about your hopes for what this DVD will accomplish?
Okay. I guess I'd say that I'd like it to have as much value as it could in helping therapists and helping survivors. My motto at this point is I like to spread understanding, hope, and inspiration. And anything that this can do in that regards will be more than welcome on my end, and I would like to give it to the world if it can be helpful too.
Okay, wonderful.
Helpful tips or suggestions, I don't know. I'm going to let it be what it is.
Wonderful. So this is a gift from us, hopefully, to really help survivors and therapists, clergy, support people, anybody trying to help survivors, and even just to make the world maybe listen a little bit more about that this is real, that this is not false memories, this isn't therapist-induced memories.
No, I wish. Sometimes it'd be so much nicer if it was.
Right.
And a lot of times it would have been nicer if I was crazy, but I'm not.
Right.
I'm here, and it's not crazy stuff. I'm not crazy. It's crazy stuff, is what I mean.
Do you want to say something about the need or the not need to be believed? Did you have a need for people to believe that this happened? Did you have a need for therapists to somehow acknowledge that they believed you?
I don't know about the therapists. I don't remember particularly feeling that they needed to believe it was more like they needed to believe the effects it had on me than with the therapists. But with people, with the people that I care about, with people that I value their opinion, mm-hmm. that was where I was wanting to have people believe it, and I wanted to be credible. And after a certain point in the healing, people start saying, get over it, it's over, it's done, enough, carry on with life. And I really wanted those people to get that, like, I'm getting on with life as best as I can. Mm. And this is not me wallowing in self-pity and remaining a victim. This is what it takes to get through it and heal and move beyond it. And that was where I really wanted people to give it credit and give it, to believe it. Mm-hmm. That was where it was mattered to me.
I've worked with many survivors who people have given them that message that, just forget about it, it's in the past, or even just to themselves, are so self-condemning because it takes so long.
Oh, yeah.
What do you want to say anything more to people like that who are condemning themselves for how long this takes?
It's the nature of the way it feels. Everything that happened to us was like an endurance test, and therapy is kind of like an endurance test too. And instead of an endurance test to just get through till the next time you get traumatized, this becomes an endurance test to get through until you feel better and light shines again, and you're not just a light at the end of the tunnel, but you're actually out in the light and being part of it. And that you just have to persevere and go ahead and doubt yourself sometimes, but don't stay there. Stay in your gut feelings, your heart feelings, your own truths, regardless what anyone else says. Your own truth is all you got to go by.
Mm-hmm. Okay, I'll get back to some of my questions here that I had set up, and then we'll pick up on that again. You were born in 1960.
Yeah.
Okay, and so you're 47, 48?
I'll be 48 in 10 days.
Okay, happy birthday. Is that okay?
Yeah.
Were birthdays your worst holiday, like for so many ritual abuse survivors?
Actually, no, it wasn't for me. For some reason, that managed to be something that, I guess because it's right at Halloween, I always got to have a Halloween party, and Mom actually did birthday parties really big for us. And even when bad things happened, there was always still a lot of good in with birthdays for me. So it's not a bad thing for me the way it is for most survivors that I know.
Okay, then happy birthday.
Thank you.
Okay.
And plus, I wasn't supposed to live very long, so for me, every birthday is triumph.
Wonderful. Okay, at what age in your life did you experience your most severe symptoms, your most severe post-traumatic stress?
After I really started getting the memories, especially, and just before. My dad died, then I went off to college and started learning what abuse and all the different things were, and it was like I was crumbling at that point, but I was hanging on to get through the college course, and it got worse and worse, and then within a few months it was I was pretty dysfunctional, and then it was in and out of it for years after that. When I would try and rush too much with the therapy, it would throw me into that. Mm-hmm. When life had too many things going on, it would throw me into that. Coping with life and being a single parent and trying to do therapy, that was really challenging. That would throw me back into it. Every little thing would throw me back into PTSD and crisis and stuff. And so most of the therapy years from 91 through till probably only about 2 or 3 years ago that it really started to ease up. Okay. And I still can, if I don't self-care properly, I can still slip into the PTSD pretty easy.
Okay.
But the rest of the stuff, it seemed like after I'd get memories, new memories or discover a new alter, there'd be a period of worse dysfunction before things got better. And I always understood that to mean that, okay, I got the traumatic memory, I've cleared that, but now I have to assimilate and process and understand, okay, that happened, so it made me believe this, and I want to change that. And it causes what I call a worldview change, where your whole understanding of the way the world works and where you fit in it changes every time you get a memory, every time you get an alter found. And so it was a constant reassessing of who am I, how does the world work, and all the baselines of life had to constantly be reassessed. And so every one of those steps caused a whole lot of chaos and distress before it stabilized. That's part of why I think it's really important that people take time and not push too hard. I got told often that I pushed really hard and really fast. I was just determined I'm going to be finished with this. I don't think there is a finish, but there's a functionality level and a joy and and getting on with life, regardless of how much is left that I've reached now.
So I've seen this a lot with people that, when the memory first comes up, that there's a period of, it looks like, feeling a lot of pain. Would you say that, how does that work? Is it like, does it seem like a couple of weeks of really being hit hard and then it sort of lifts, or just to help people understand, because people are very worried about that pain, but right. I do tend to see that it lifts.
I think it depends on how much time you're able to give it. If you've got a whole family that you have to look after and stuff, it's going to last longer because you only have little snatches of time to be with yourself and deal with that. Whereas if you're like a single person and you can just dedicate the next day or two to that, it can go much quicker. And so I don't think it's set. I think it's partly dependent on how new the content is. If it's familiar content, it's easier sometimes, usually. I think though that it's just, I always expect that it's going to have some period of processing and adjustment, and to be gentle and kind with yourself in how long that takes.
Yes.
And all the time, you can make yourself crazy if you don't take a break from it sometimes.
Okay, very interesting. So there's breaks. The self-care when you get a new memory or discover a new alter. Can you describe what you found helpful?
For me, for many of the years, drawing and journaling helped me. I did pen or crayon or colored pencil, depending on the age of the alter. I could tell the age of the alter that I was processing the stuff. If I grabbed crayons, it was little kids. If I grabbed colored pencils, it was a different stage. If I grabbed ink, I felt like an ordinary ink pen. It was a very concrete black and white kind of alter. And so that was sort of a clue. I did a lot of art. I did a lot of journaling, writing it out. And myself, I did a lot of cranking up the music and singing at the top of my lungs of whatever song expressed the emotions that I was going through too. So it might be Carpenter's singing, Rainy Days and Mondays, or it might be Alice Cooper, No More Mr. Nice Guy, or anything in between. And it was a mechanism for expelling, releasing, and a lot of times even identifying the feelings too. Because I didn't grow up knowing the names for the feelings. And so learning the names for the feelings and learning that you don't have only one feeling at a time. People actually have a whole spectrum of feelings. That has been a significant challenge to adapt to. Because when it's all broken up, if you're in that alter is despair, or that alter is joy, or they kind of, most of the time, they only hold a very small range of emotions.
Yeah, you described in your chapter the programming to partition different feelings to different alters. How did they do that? How did they manage to sequester different feelings to different alters?
Those alters only got those experiences, so they became owners of those feelings.
So if they wanted to cement a particular feeling with a particular alter, they would somehow call that alter forward and then expose it to some...
Yeah, to experiences. Usually music was used in the background in some way to set the feeling atmosphere mode. A lot of times the colors around me, mostly the colors around me and on me, were linked into the feelings too. And then there would be the way they would talk to me, the way they behave around me, all of that stuff would be forcing certain kinds of feelings to be experienced by that alter. And then they mostly just did it that way. And then sometimes I personally learned at some point my alters or my soul or something learned understood the concept of character development. And so then I was able, I think more than they intended, to have characters that could have a range of feelings more than just a little pocket of feelings. But even still, there was certain alters for certain types of feelings. And soft feelings were a long ways away.
They weren't very interested in programming in soft feelings.
No, they didn't, and they kind of locked them away as much as possible. They were kind of the ones that were shut down more. And I think soft feelings are more of the spectrum of normal, and they didn't want that, I guess. And I think that there's a learning that goes on inside that those soft feelings are the vulnerable feelings too. And those soft feelings are the ones that allow others a way in to control you or hurt you. And so I think that separate from what they do, there becomes a learning in yourself, or in myself, to stay away from those feelings. Don't go near them, because they're the ones that would send off the PTSD or the asthma attacks or whatever.
Out of fear of being hurt again by somebody.
Yeah, fear of being hurt, fear of making mistakes, big time. You don't want to say the wrong thing, and if your feelings are too close, then you might say something that you shouldn't, or indicate it somehow. And it was a lot of
So they didn't want you driven by your own genuine needs. They wanted you to be pretty much what they wanted you to be. Not advocating for yourself. And
No,
right.
no. Even to speak up and say, I need to go to the hospital, I can't breathe, wasn't allowed.
Uh-huh.
I would be kept home for days. Mom would shoot me full of adrenaline and not take me to the hospital until my lips turned blue. And I'd get there and they'd say, you should have brought her in sooner. She's nearly dead. And they just would leave me until that point, because it was too much trouble. They didn't want to have to bother with it. That's what the message they gave me anyways.
Was there a purpose in separating these different emotional states into different altars? How did that accomplish their intentions for you? What purpose did that have for them?
I think it made it so that they could just control me easier, and it's like having a ready-made, fast food versus a restaurant where everything is done just right. You want this kind of behavior, you got it right now. You want this kind of emotional response. Somebody starts talking to me and asking me questions that I might tell something. Well, then they want to be able to make sure that I have some part that will deliver the information in a way that makes it not credited, or makes me sound crazy, or slip into hysteria instead of communicating. There was a lot of they wanted me to be able, when I was being a sex slave or whatever. I mean, some guys wanted someone sweet and lovey little girl, so you got to be able to play that. And then somebody else wants some dominatrix kind of whip, you got to be able to play that. And
right.
So they needed a range of ways to have me, and then the soldiers needed to be really cold and detached, and so it was basically character development for the purposes of what they wanted me to be able to show and be for any of their purposes.
How would they get the parts, or the feeling parts, or the function parts, the ones they wanted up at any given point? Do they go by names? You talk about colors. How would they get who they wanted, and how would that part stay up for the duration of whatever they wanted to use you for?
I think it depended. Sometimes, some altars, it was like calling me by name.
Mm-hmm.
A lot of the sex ones were like that. Soldiers was more like a phrase and stuff, things like, okay, it's time, you gotta be tough now, or something like that would add in toughness. Sometimes it was a touch, or some altars were very position specific, and so when they were in that body position, that was the altar that was either fully out or just taking their piece of it. Mm-hmm. And then a lot of it was just very built in somehow, so that it was very situation specific. In these situations, I just was these altars. Uh-huh. And in other situations, I was, if I'm hanging out with the guys, I act like a guy. I talk like a guy, very tough behavior. If I was doing the girly thing, then I'd be kind of girly. If I was business, if I was supposed to be, being professional and stuff, then that's how I'd be. And environment and clothing, the kind of styles of clothing and the colors, and the lighting. So if they were doing it on purpose, they'd do the lighting and the clothing colors and the music, the different things. I didn't know until way late in therapy how much the music played a part. And so when I'd be out in the world, say walking through a store, and different kinds of music would play, that would be impacting how I behaved without my realizing it, and how I interacted. And I couldn't understand why sometimes it made no sense, and I'd be just snarly with people for no reason, or I'd be just walked all over for no reason. And towards the end of the therapy, I was really coming to an understanding of how much the music really, really impacted me and shaped the roles I played.
Was becoming conscious of the effects of things like the music, what was that important in?
Oh, yeah.
Can you explain for people how becoming conscious of it helps?
Well, my understanding is that as soon as it becomes conscious awareness, it just alters the way I understand things, and I can't go back even if I try with denial. Once it's in conscious awareness, it can't really be made go away anymore. And so then thereafter, oh, okay, so music affects me, and I might not be thinking about it, but I'll notice, hey, there's this kind of music and I'm acting this way. There's this kind of music and I'm acting this way. And it just becomes something that it adds to the observations of life and self-awareness. And all the healing really does require a whole lot of self-awareness. Every step of the way, you got to be paying attention to what am I thinking, what am I feeling, how am I breathing, what in my body, what sounds and colors and the environment. It was like constantly adding new layers and nuances to the understanding of how those layers and nuances affected me.
And so once you were aware of how a stimulus used to bring up certain alters, then it wouldn't work anymore?
No, it wasn't quite like that. It didn't immediately stop, usually.
Uh-huh.
It was usually a transitional period of going from no choice slowly into more and more choice to the point where full choice, and then eventually it just had no impact on a lot of the stuff. But it's a slow progression.
Okay, wonderful. Thank you. That would be very helpful to people. I just want to backtrack a little bit with the when new memories and new alters would come forward, and then you would allow the parts to do the art, so the children with the crayons, etc. Did they need to draw about the memory, or did they just need a chance to draw just for their own enjoyment, or was the art used mostly for trauma processing, or?
Trauma and emotions, yeah,
Trauma
and not
and
always just, not only the trauma. Sometimes it was just processing the emotions of daily life too, and that. But generally, it was somehow related to whatever I was processing. Yeah.
Okay.
Whether some stuff, some of the really horrifically stuff that left physical memories and visual memories and stuff that I couldn't escape. Those ones in particular I had to draw.
Uh-huh.
Draw the really nasty scene out, and then it was a mechanism of getting it out of me. Some of the stuff I had to write out too, to be able to, I'd remembered it, but in therapy or on my own sometimes, but then to to write it out, made it concrete so that the rest of the alters could know about it, was part of it.
Uh-huh.
And then it made it so that it was like taking it out of me, and I could start really letting it go now and seeing it objectively and what had happened to me with it. But it was all of that was a sort of a, it's not, for me, I couldn't just process the trauma, because it has, for me, my approach was pretty much always whatever's coming up in my life is what's bringing up what's the pertinent pieces of my past to deal with. And so it wasn't straightforward just dealing with the past or just living in the here and now. It kind of melded all together all the time. So life would bring me something that triggered something from the past, that then I'd deal with the thing from the past meant I could deal with the thing in my life, which then made me understand and move further away from the trauma and into the healing. And so it was kind of a package deal.
Let's say, you don't need to process the trauma, and you address this a little bit before the people, that, well, you shouldn't do it, it's too much, it's too, just leave it alone. What would you say to them?
I would say that's not probably what I would suggest. I would say, though, that it's really important for people to have a support system when they're doing it. Mm-hmm. And time to process the stuff afterwards, like maybe 24 hours or something after the memory work before you go on to trying to deal with life again. I would I lost the question.
I'm trying to a lot. There's actually kind of conflicting ideas within the therapy world about
Right.
some people say oh, don't do trauma work, and other people say no, you need to do the trauma work. You need to
Right.
deal with consciously knowing the stuff that happened.
Yeah, I think you have to do the memory work. I believe you have to do the memory work. I don't think it's possible to go back into every single memory of every single thing that ever happened. In mine, there was a lot of times there was similar types of training and programming and trauma that could be dealt with together. And I don't think you have to completely go back in to be lost into it every time. You have to go in enough to reclaim the feelings and the sensations so that you know what they are. And I've discovered that the really big thing is, what were you told? What was going on? What was the lesson in this experience? What did you learn? What did you come to believe about yourself and how you fit in the world? And what feelings and beliefs were you left with after this? And that's the pieces that truly need to be reclaimed. And enough of it that you can understand the progression and what happened, and identify all the physical, emotional, mental, spiritual aspects of it. But I know of some people that have gone right back into the memory work, and it's just a mechanism for reliving it and reliving it and reliving it. And if you're just reliving it all by itself, that doesn't do anything. You need to understand what happened, what you learned, and how it impacted your life afterwards, and then you can have choice. And to me, the memory work is a piece of that, but it's more critical what parts of that memory you claim.
A lot of survivors, when they're in the worst of it, when they're first getting their memories and first discovering that they have personalities, they are very upset with their level of dysfunction. So can you explain a little bit about how dysfunctional you were at the worst of it, which would have been, I assume, age 31, 32, 33, based on...
Actually, from about 31 through till about 37, actually.
31 to 37, okay.
Thereabouts, yeah.
So,
and how dysfunctional was I? I was useless. I couldn't think straight. I couldn't look after my home. I couldn't work. I was also going through learning that everything in my life had been abuse. So I was learning how to parent and taking training how to parent and stuff, which actually helped a lot in that. That gave me child development stages and helped me to understand what was going on for me with the altars and my own healing and stuff too. But I was very dysfunctional. I pretty much lost the ability to have fun, to laugh, to joke. I cried all the time. I felt like I never stopped crying. I just stopped going places because I would only cry. It was very hard to do much of anything but the therapy. I couldn't really pull myself away from it into living life. Yeah, all I could really do was deal with what I've got coming up, coming to an understanding of myself, what was going on, drawing, writing, screwy sleep hours, nightmares when it first started, terrible nightmares, and the asthma attacks and panic attacks and things like that would get very extreme. Trying to talk to people, I always wanted to tell people about it, and it would just spill forth everywhere. It took quite a few years before I learned that I was traumatizing people with the content of what I was spilling at them. You can't just randomly tell everybody this stuff. It's not good for them. So I was driving people away in the process because I was traumatizing them. So it was like I didn't know how to seek support properly. It was like sometimes I was like a little child and I couldn't even think how to cook or shop. I actually had times when I I had always had a very functional altar system where there was always, I looked sane, felt to some degree, and they didn't just randomly switch. They did a very functional system of switches. And then when I was in the first few years of therapy, I was busily trying to control that, and that messed my system up really bad. And so then the wrong altars would pop out in the wrong places. I'd be in the grocery store and all of a sudden a 6-year-old altar comes out and all I can see is the Pez candy dispensers. I can't read my list. I can't do anything. So there was a few years there where it was very, very dysfunctional. Critically so. I had home support. I had friends and people. Thank goodness I had people that could help me. And I had a lot of the physical symptoms of the damage that had been done when I was young and the altars that carried the physical damage. So I had a lot of, I had about a year where I walked like I was palsied. My legs and my arms and my hands just didn't work. I flapped. And it was like all the worst stuff came gushing into my existence. And I couldn't escape it no matter what I did or where I went. And I was stuck with it. I couldn't do anything but deal with it. At that point, it ceased to be a choice. I was either going to deal, or I was going to be locked up, or I was going to die, or something.
Oh, were you suicidal also at parts in there?
Fairly soon after I found out I was multiple, I was suicidal within the first year, because there was an altar specifically trained to be making sure that I died if I told. And luckily I had good therapists at that point, and even a boyfriend, and they all took my keys away from my car because this part was supposed to drive and hit a tree. And then there was other bits, but mostly I was able to not follow through on the suicide stuff because I'd done a lot of learning on it as a teenager, and I was just like, and I tried to kill myself once as a teenager, and I woke up after a whole lot of pills, and I was awake while my friends were around, and I was paralyzed and couldn't communicate, couldn't open my eyes. And so it was a very terrifying experience. So I had some experience that sort of overrode that, I guess. And I had a kid. And for me, there was a huge lot of fear that if something happened to me, my family would get my son. And so I had an inner drive that even when I wanted to die more than anything, I couldn't because of my son. But what did happen was that some of the other stuff kicked in on a not consciously trying to kill myself level, and my lungs collapsed, and other physical trainings that they'd given me to make my body betray me and kill me by itself. And so I was having lung collapses, and I ended up with lung surgery from it, and that nearly killed me. That very nearly killed me.
Wow. Looking back at this whole process with reliving the horrible physical parts of the trauma and having the actual physical symptoms, do you have any advice about how people can reduce the impact of that, how they can prevent those symptoms from hitting them so hard?
Identify them, connect with them. When you reclaim the memory, notice the things that it would be attached to it, the body parts. And for me, I also came to, if I have something going on with my body that's causing me problems, I ask, what is this, a memory? Is this related to a memory? Is this something from the past? And that was actually a lot of times the reason I went to certain memories at certain times was because I was healing my physical being, and by finding the root causes of the physical suffering. And that's a point where I would throw in that myself, metaphysics and the power of the mind and the emotions to impact our physical being. That's, to me, a critical aspect of it all. There's a woman that's pretty famous, I think, Louise L. Hay, and she does things like heal your body and stuff. And she has a little handbook, and it lists it lists your illness or your symptom, and then it lists thoughts that are probably at the cause of it, and then new affirmative thoughts to link. And I would look at that and see what kind of thoughts it listed as going with this body symptom, And I was always shocked that it was just it was the things that were spinning in my mind at that time is exactly what was going on. And so then I would start working on the affirmatives. So like for lung problems are you want to die. Well, that makes total sense. I really wanted to die from the time I was really little. And so the affirmation is that life is for me. It's safe for me to live. And I would start working on that. Back stuff is about being supported. Mm-hmm. So I would affirm that I'm being supported. While I would also track I would ask, what memories, what experiences linked in with this? What are the ones that gave me that belief or that message, or what spins things are going on that are feeding me that right now? So I kind of worked at it all at once. Mm-hmm. And one would lead in, like a memory might lead into helping my body, but then a body thing might lead into helping the other healing. So I couldn't separate it. It's all mixed package.
When you say, I would ask, does this feeling have something to do with a memory? Would you
ask myself,
be addressing your alters, or would you just be kind of being in that state of mind of what is this, and how did you do that?
Yeah, if there was an altar that I knew it was to do with, then I would ask that specific altar. Uh-huh. But generally I ask just, okay, what's this about? And then I just it would be just a general internal asking. And I think it's common to other people's altar systems. I don't know, but for sure. But for my own, there was always some part, and I think it maybe is the soul or spirit, that understands and knows where to steer in the healing. Follow this. Don't go there yet. Do this piece first. Here's the answer to this that you can have now. 5 years later, I get the next piece of that answer, and when I'm ready for it. And I really believe there's some kind of divine timing or something, and some inner self that is beyond the altars that guides the healing process.
What would you say to people who are terrified to go into that space of asking themselves, what is this about, who are afraid of memories?
What started me on it was the basic thing, and I think this might apply. Are you going to use your energy running from it or finding out what it is? It took way more energy to run from it and to fight it and to keep it down than it took to find it, face it, deal with it, be real and heal, you know? It all takes energy, but I might as well have a positive result at the end. And so I would suggest that it's always a better use of your energy. And plus, I really don't like having the same old crap repeating again and again in my life. And if I don't deal with it, that's what happens. So you got something to deal with. It's going to get better if you do.
Fantastic. During the worst of it, you were describing a lot of switching happening that wasn't happening before. So you had kind of a stable outside person before, and then when you started getting your memories, there was a whole lot of switching.
Yeah.
Now, a lot of survivors, I know, also have that experience and very distressed by all that switching. Do you have any ideas on reducing all that switching, helping people to reduce that a little bit?
For me, I found it very helpful to get everybody working as a cooperative system once we knew of an altar, or we always embraced them being part of the cooperative system if they were capable of doing so. Some of them were too injured and needed to have inner healing or something. Mm-hmm. But I lost the question.
About how to reduce the switching. You were saying about
reducing
getting
the switching,
them to cooperate, and for the people that have all that random switching and are very afraid of it.
I would say work with your altars rather than against. Mm-hmm. Don't really try and control it exactly. Like imposing control is just what they did to us. Finding out and like, okay, you have skills this way and you can do this, and you have skills this way, and helping reassign tasks, often the same kind of task, like a part that might spin the pieces away, have them turn and spin the pieces together. Mm-hmm. And so for me, I think it was valuing and getting the cooperation and making them part of the healing team. And then when each altar is valued, they don't have to vie for their attention the same way. And when they're able to get their needs met, and then they're working as a cooperative, so some altars have the skills for some things, they deal with those, but then they're off, they get a break on other stuff, they don't have to do them. And making sure that the altars get their needs met internally and in the real world. So like inner healing for altars that aren't like a 6-year-old altar in an adult body, it needs inner healing as much as it needs outer healing. But it also needs to play.
In the outside world.
Outside world. But you can also have them doing all that. I had parts inside where there was party central for ones that needed to party, and there was the girl power tower for all the preteen girls that needed to do their hair, and so giving them places internally to get their needs met that are specific to them. And they tend to form, for me, they tended to match up with each other and form groups and be drawn to each other when they had similar, not necessarily similar experiences in the past, but similar development goals left over.
Okay.
And they would kind of partner up. And so just really valuing every part. If you've got a demon altar, that is not a bad thing. That is something that was just trying to keep you safe and doing what it was told. And maybe if you got a priestess altar, or you got a wild altar, they're not bad. They're just doing what they understood. And so helping them find new healthy ways to do the things that they used to do. I have altars that a lot of them were, I was addicted to adrenaline. And so it's really good for me to go to fair rides, ride on wild rides at the fair or different things like that to get my adrenaline fixes instead of the old dangerous ways. And so valuing cooperation.
Value all the parts.
Yeah.
So when you are afraid of them, there'll be more switching, but if you reach toward them, you can work toward less switching.
Yes. Yeah.
Okay, wonderful.
Yeah.
Now, in contrast to the worst times, how are you now?
Oh, it's very different. I'm still adjusting a spectrum of feelings. And the whole thing of having everything be like good in life is actually almost as hard to adjust to as all the trauma was, because there's still the old belief systems that I have to overcome separate from the programming, that if something good happens, then something bad's going to follow. So, this sort of the old phrase, waiting for the axe to fall or something. That part is sometimes, I have to keep breathing at the good stuff, and it's like, it's okay, it's safe. And I'm safe to have good stuff. But I have a good life at this point. My health, I have health I never had. I never knew I could have health like this. I'm on less medication than ever before in my life. I can do more physically. I can think and follow along much better than I used to. I have a lot more choice and in even if there's things that still appeal that are unhealthy, I have a lot more choice than I ever knew was possible. And a lot of the stuff that used to really appeal to altars, it just falls by the wayside with the healing process. It just ceases to appeal. Friendships and relationships are much healthier. The way I interact in the world is much healthier. I am much more careful about the music I listen to. I still will use some of the old stuff, but I'm very aware of the words and what messages I'm giving myself. What other kinds of things would...
How about you said that you need to make sure that you keep the self-care going?
Oh, yeah.
Can you give advice to people about that?
Really, really, really listening to the body, to my mind, to my heart, to my feelings. Using the feelings as the... Okay, how am I feeling? Okay, what's causing this? Is this a good feeling? That's cool. What causes it? If this is a bad feeling, why? Why am I anxious? Why am I scared? Why am I not wanting to do that? And really listening and noticing when I'm tired. noticing when I'm cold. The fibromyalgia I had extremely bad, and I've noticed a lot of that was because I was so dissociated that I didn't notice I was frozen, and I was in terrible knots, and then I'd go to bed and just twitch as I thawed, as the heat got into me. I only time I get the fibromyalgia now is when I so preoccupied I don't notice I've gotten cold. So a lot of it is learning to be aware of the things that I dissociated from, to pay attention to the messages that are available to me and the guidance that's available. When I'm tired, go to sleep. When I'm hungry, eat. When I need to have some fun, do so.
Wonderful.
Yeah,
Wonderful.
so it's in here stuff.
Fantastic.
Right. Can you say a little bit about why you decided to become so public at this point in your life? You have a chapter in here, and you're making this DVD. You are defying the don't talk, don't remember stuff
I
as
always
much
did,
as
though.
anybody can.
Yeah, I always did. That was one of their problems with me, is they didn't make me shut up, and the more they tried, the more I talked. I think I'm a born rebel, and I believe in past lives and things, so I also believe I had a contract to come in and go through all that hell so that I could come here and do this now. And actually, it very much feels like doing this, speaking out, sharing this, making this video is something that makes all the horror that I went through and the nasty growing up, and then the nasty healing too. It wasn't an easy journey. It was a long, hard process. It's like it all had more value than just me. It's got, for whatever reason, everything I've ever experienced has made me who I am, and able to see patterns, and able to be a kind of communicative person. And it seems like people find me inspiring, and I like to make, my greatest joy in life is to give people ahas. So it's like everything has led me to here, and here I am. And why am I doing it? Because that's what I'm doing. And I've always tried to follow my soul, my heart, my calling. And in my 20s, it was just throw Halloween parties and make costumes. And then another point, it was go to get involved in film festivals or whatever. But it's all been accruing, and public speaking in church and different things. And it's like I was following a path I didn't know I had. And now it's here, and if I can help others, if I can help break, I guess one of the things I've always wanted to do was break the family cycle for me. And I would like to break the cycle of isolation and pain and suffering that goes on in the world. And I don't think this is limited to survivors. Myself, I think that everybody has dissociation to some degree. Mm-hmm. It's a good, healthy thing, but at some point in everybody, in some way, it tips into a not good thing. And I personally think dissociation is one of the most important understanding about it is like one of the most things we need to know in this world. Mm-hmm. And anything I can do to make a better world is good for me. It's good for everyone. And I generally just like good.
Wonderful. Do you have any fear of retaliation of any kind for doing this?
Yeah.
What do you fear?
For me, I fear that that there would be a lot credibility thing, that people would say I'm not credible, that they'd say I'm crazy. There was a lot of training about me being crazy, so I worry that I'll get people telling me that again, that's saying I'm crazy. And I worry that being this evidently healthy, at this point I'm on a disability pension, and for a little bit longer that needs to be the case. Mm-hmm. And I would hate to have that disappear.
I see.
So I don't want to be seeming like so functional that people think I've been faking it all these years or making it up. Because I had a lot of people accuse me over the years of it's just making it up. Mm-hmm. And so I don't want to be, I guess I just want to be believed and understood as part of it. And then, I forgot the question again.
What would you say to people who say, "Oh, you're crazy, you're schizophrenic"?
Oh, the dangers. Well, actually, at this point, I say I wish I was crazy. It would have been simpler. You could have just locked me up and fed me my pablum, and I would have been fine. But it's not that simple. And crazy would have been way easier than what I've been through. Way easier. My big fear of retaliation is the people I care about.
Okay.
That's the piece that's the most, because the threats were always against the people I care about. So I actually still to this day do a certain amount of not letting people get too close, or keeping that spread out around enough people that they can't determine who's the most important to go after. My son, part of why I'm able to speak out now is my son is 20, he's grown up now. He's not a baby anymore. So I don't, and he's very much on board with me doing this, and says, you know, he not to worry about him at this point. Those are the kinds of fears that I have. And the other fear is that anything that I'm putting out would be taken and misconstrued and used to harm people. Like Christ's, Jesus' message was twisted to damage people and control people. I don't want this to happen with this stuff. I want it to have only positive effects. Mm-hmm. So the fear of any kind of negative results would be the other thing.
Okay. I think for survivors, they're kind of between a rock and a hard place sometimes. They're afraid that if they tell, there'll be retaliation, but if they comply with their abusers, then they just get horribly tortured for the rest of their lives. So for people who are choosing to comply out of fear that their loved ones will be hurt, etc., what would you like to say to them?
I think always the baseline is your own soul instincts. I would say if you can find safety for the people, or do something so that you can speak out, because the more that you speak out, the more power you have to protect yourself and your loved ones. If you don't do your healing, if you don't do the telling, if you keep it a secret, then your loved ones get it too. They're either going to get hurt because you don't do anything to protect them and speak out. You think you're protecting them and you keep quiet. They're going to get hurt then. Or you can speak out and have a longer term concept of protecting them and breaking the patterns and stuff. I would say that it's always worth speaking out, at least to yourself. Mm-hmm. Don't speak out to the world if it's not good for you. But speak out to yourself and those you're able to, because you got to break the patterns. You got to take the control back and start the healing for yourself and your loved ones.